There's a reason people underestimate you, why they speak over you, why they test your patience, push your boundaries, and quietly question your value. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're harmless. You show your cards too early. You care too visibly. You try to be liked before being feared. And in a Machiavellian world, being liked without being feared is the same as being ignored. The world doesn't fear goodness, it fears mystery. From the moment you were young, you were conditioned to be seen as a good person. Smile more. Be open. Be nice first. Be easy to approach. That conditioning runs deep, and on the surface, it sounds like the foundation of a good life. But here's the brutal truth. People don't respect good people. They use them. Because what's visible is predictable, and what's predictable can be controlled. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He didn't write to comfort. He wrote to warn. A leader who is not feared will always be vulnerable. That doesn't mean you should become violent. It means you must become unreadable. Because in a room full of loud people, the one who says nothing is the one everyone watches. Not because they expect a joke, but because they expect something they can't name. That's the goal, to be watched, not for attention, but for precaution. When you are not perceived as a threat, you become a tool. Look at your own life. How many times were you ignored until you walked away? How many times did people come back, only after you became silent? How many boundaries went unnoticed until you enforced them with distance? That's because you were playing the good game while they were playing the power game. They knew you'd explain, you'd forgive, you'd stay, you'd apologize first, you'd never escalate. And once someone knows you won't escalate, they escalate first, and they win. Machiavelli saw this in politics, but you see it in your relationships, in your career, even in your own home. People don't test the dangerous ones. They test the emotionally accessible ones, because they know your empathy will stop you before your pride does. But when you quietly become a threat, the dynamic changes. They flinch before they speak. They second-guess their tone. They prepare more carefully. They hesitate before disrespecting you. Why? Because now you might not bark, but you might bite. Psychologically, this is simple. Human beings are wired to assess power quickly. They look for cues, tone, reaction speed, emotional availability, and use them to calculate how far they can push. If you are fully transparent, they know your limits. And when they know your limits, they will walk right up to them again and again. But when your limits are hidden, when your reactions are slower, when your silence is heavier, they stop walking casually toward that line. They start thinking about what might happen if they cross it. This isn't about becoming cold or cruel. It's about recalibrating your presence. It's about understanding that power isn't just about strength, it's about perception. The person they can't predict is the person they prepare for. The one who leaves questions unanswered is the one whose name lingers in the room after they're gone. You've spent most of your life trying to be loved first. Now it's time to be respected first, because love without respect turns into expectation. Respect without love can still hold power, and the sweet spot, the true Machiavellian balance, is being liked enough to be welcomed, but feared enough to be handled with care. That begins by no longer being harmless. It begins by becoming unreadable. Harmlessness is not the virtue you were told it was. It is not a badge of honor. It is an invitation, a quiet signal that says there is no cost to crossing you. In the natural world, the creature that cannot harm is not admired for its gentleness. It is prey. In human power dynamics, the same instinct applies. When people sense you are harmless, they stop calculating the consequences of mistreating you. They feel no weight in their actions, no risk in their words, no reason to step carefully. This is why so many who take pride in being good find themselves used, overlooked, and even quietly resented. Because goodness, when it is exposed without limit and becomes predictable, turns into a map of your boundaries. And once someone can read that map, they know every shortcut to bypass your defenses and get what they want. Predictability is not safety, it is vulnerability. The opposite of harmless is not cruelty, it is unreadability. An unreadable person is a closed book, showing only selective glimpses of their pages, never the full story. Their tone is measured, their reactions are deliberate, and their emotional state is difficult to pin down. You never know exactly what they are thinking or how far they might be willing to go. And it is that uncertainty, not aggression, that forces people to tread with caution. Machiavelli understood this deeply. In politics, he observed that a ruler who could be read too easily was a ruler who could be controlled. Allies and enemies alike would craft their strategies around his predictable habits. But a leader who remained opaque, revealing only what was necessary, would force others into a constant state of preparation. When they couldn't read his intentions, they prepared for the worst. And in that preparation, they treated him with more respect than they otherwise might have given. The psychology behind this is simple. The human brain fears uncertainty more than it fears most threats. When the future is unknown, the mind begins to imagine possibilities, often the darkest ones. In the absence of concrete information, people project. And if you are deliberate, you can make that projection work in your favor. By limiting what you reveal, you create a space for others to overestimate your reach, your influence, and your capacity to act. This is not manipulation. It is strategic control over your own narrative. The danger comes when people can predict your emotional patterns. If they know you always forgive after an apology, they can wrong you without fear. If they know you will defend yourself when challenged, they can bait you into wasting energy on explanations. If they know you will never escalate, they will escalate first, confident in your restraint. Unreadability breaks this pattern. When others are not sure whether you will walk away, retaliate, or remain silent, they become more careful. They monitor their tone. They check their actions twice. They think longer before speaking your name in a disrespectful way. To be unreadable is not to be cold or detached. It is to be deliberate. It is to speak with intention rather than impulse, to reveal parts of yourself in small, controlled doses, to hold a stillness that others cannot interpret, leaving them unsure whether you are calm or simply waiting. In a world obsessed with exposure, where people constantly broadcast their ambitions, insecurities, and triggers, opacity becomes a rare and magnetic form of power. The moment you stop participating in the constant self-reveal, you set yourself apart. You shift from being the open book everyone believes they understand to becoming the question mark they cannot solve. And in the unspoken hierarchy of respect, the question mark is always more dangerous than the period. The power of the unexpressed is one of the most underestimated forces in human interaction, yet it is also one of the most decisive. People measure control by testing your reactions. They watch to see if they can make you flinch, make you explain yourself, make you soften when pressed. Every time you take the bait, every time you rush to clarify, justify, or reassure, you confirm something for them. You are emotionally accessible. And emotional accessibility, while beautiful in intimacy, is a liability in the power game. It tells people you can be reached, that there is a direct path to influencing you. And once they know that path exists, they will walk it again and again. When you withhold, everything shifts. The absence of an expected reaction forces the other person into uncertainty. If they cannot predict, Whether you will be offended, amused, or unmoved, they hesitate. They become cautious in ways they weren't before. This is not about becoming detached from life. It is about taking back authorship of your own energy. Most people give their emotional presence away for free. They react on demand, bleeding their thoughts and feelings into every situation. And in doing so, they teach the world exactly how to pull their strings. But when you stop reacting on cue, when you slow the pace of your responses, or even remove them entirely, you change the terms of the interaction. Suddenly, they are playing on your timing, not theirs. Machiavelli knew the value of this. In his time, power was often decided before a single command was given. It was not the sword that frightened people. It was the uncertainty of whether it might be drawn. That same principle applies today. The most feared person in the room is not always the loudest or the most confrontational. It is the one whose next move is unknown. If they cannot predict whether you will act or hold, they must account for both. And in doing so, they limit their own moves. There is a strategic elegance in letting others talk while you remain silent, in hearing every word without giving away what you think of it. That stillness can feel heavier than any speech. It is the pause in a negotiation that makes the other side rush to fill the air with concessions. It is the calm in an argument that makes the aggressor second-guess their own position. It is the unreadable expression that forces someone to prepare for possibilities they cannot name. To harness the power of the unexpressed, you must first accept that not every attack deserves a counter, not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected, and not every accusation requires your defense. Silence does not mean weakness. It means you are choosing the battlefield. You are deciding when and how the engagement will happen, if it happens at all. And that decision is where the real leverage lies. Because in the absence of your words, people are left alone with their own thoughts. And in that solitude, they begin to create stories. Stories about what you might do, what you might know, and what you might be capable of. When you can let those stories live without feeling the need to rewrite them, you are no longer at the mercy of other people's pace or demands. You are setting the tempo. You are shaping the atmosphere. And in that quiet, you will find that influence grows not from what you say, but from what you leave unsaid. Machiavelli's 4 core moves are not theatrical displays of dominance. They are deliberate shifts in how you reveal yourself, how you respond, and how you shape the space around you. The first is to never show your full hand. Most people are so eager to prove themselves, to establish trust, or to display competence, that they reveal everything too soon. Their ambitions, their insecurities, their long-term strategies. They think transparency builds connection, but in reality, it builds vulnerability. Once someone has a full map of your intentions, they can predict your path and plan their advantage around it. Machiavelli understood that power thrives in opacity. If they can't fully read you, they can't fully prepare for you. This doesn't mean lying. It means selective revelation. It means keeping certain motives wrapped in fog, not to confuse, but to control how you are interpreted. In a world where everyone is broadcasting their thoughts, the one who holds back forces others to work harder to understand them, and that effort alone makes you matter more. The second move is to never defend and never explain. Few things shatter the illusion of strength faster than defensiveness. If someone accuses you of being distant and you rush to explain why, you have just revealed that you care more about their perception than you intended. If they question your decisions and you scramble to justify them, you signal that their approval matters. Every explanation is a doorway into your mind, and once someone can walk through it, they can map the architecture of your thinking. Machiavelli would have listened, nodded, perhaps said a single word, noted, and left the rest to their imagination. Strength is often mistaken for the ability to argue well, but in reality, the stronger position is often saying less and letting others wrestle with the silence you leave behind. The third move is to send mixed signals on purpose. People fear what they cannot predict, and nothing destabilizes emotional certainty like inconsistency. This doesn't mean being erratic or dishonest. It means refusing to let your patterns become so fixed that others can rely on them. Praise someone today and replace them tomorrow. Offer kindness and then withdraw without explanation. Be warm in one meeting, cool in the next. The aim is not cruelty, but psychological unpredictability. When people cannot be sure which version of you they will encounter, they tread more carefully, and in that carefulness, they give you more space than they give to the predictable. Machiavelli called it a necessary illusion, and it is one of the fastest ways to shift the power balance without ever raising your voice. The fourth move is to remain composed when others lose control. Self-control in the midst of chaos is a signal of power that no amount of shouting can match. When gossip swirls, stay silent. When tempers rise, speak more slowly. When panic takes hold, maintain a steady tone. If you can't be shaken, you can't be moved. And if you can't be moved, people will begin to wonder what you might choose to move next. This is how presence is built, through stillness that feels unbreakable. In conflict, Machiavelli would rather deliver one decisive phrase at the end than waste energy on 100 defensive replies during it. The fewer words you use, the more weight each one carries. And when people can't predict those words, they begin adjusting their behavior before you even speak. That's no longer communication, that's command. These four moves work because they all serve the same principle. Control the frame, and you control the interaction. By revealing less, defending less, destabilizing patterns, and maintaining composure, you force others to operate on your terms. And once they are on your terms, they are already halfway under your influence. Presence is a currency far more valuable than force, and Machiavelli understood that the most enduring form of power is not the power to dominate in the moment, but the power to remain in someone's mind long after the moment has passed. Force can win a battle, but presence wins the war that follows. A person who relies solely on force creates resistance. People may comply when compelled, but they dream of the day they can push back. Presence, however, reshapes the environment so that people choose to adjust themselves without needing to be told. It is the invisible influence that changes behavior before a command is even given. This is why the balance between fear and respect is essential. Fear without respect breeds quiet rebellion. If someone fears you but does not respect you, they will pretend to obey while secretly working against you, complying in public but sabotaging in private. That kind of power is brittle. It holds only until the first chance to break it appears. Respect without fear, on the other hand, breeds entitlement. If someone respects your abilities but sees no risk in crossing you, they may push for more than they give, speak over you, and assume that kindness is guaranteed. That kind of respect is comfortable, but it is soft. It erodes under pressure. The sweet spot is tension, that unspoken understanding that you are kind, but not to be tested, calm, but not to be played with, silent, but not asleep. This tension keeps people attentive in your presence and cautious in your absence. It's the awareness that while you may not act often, you could act decisively if pushed too far. Machiavelli's genius was knowing how to weave this tension into everyday interactions without theatrics. It is not about loud declarations. It is about subtle cues, the slight pause before you respond, the choice to let a silence stretch longer than expected, the rare but perfectly timed correction that ends a conversation without raising your voice. presence over force is also about conservation. Those who rely on force exhaust themselves because they must constantly act to maintain control. Those who master presence act less often, but with greater effect. They do not burn energy proving their power. They let the perception of their power do most of the work. This is why the most feared people in any room are often the ones who speak least. They have trained others to measure their words differently, to watch for signs that may not even exist, and to live in a state of preemptive respect. To cultivate presence over force, you must be intentional with when you appear and when you withdraw, when you speak and when you remain silent, when you allow closeness and when you withhold. This rhythm creates a psychological scarcity. People notice when you are gone, and they measure their behavior differently when you return. The absence is felt, and the return is watched. And over time, this rhythm embeds itself into the way people think about you. You no longer need to demand their attention. They offer it freely, just in case you might act. That is the difference between those who must chase obedience and those who simply command it. Habits are the architecture of silent power. They are the daily, almost invisible choices that, over time, build the perception of someone who cannot be moved, manipulated, or easily understood. The first habit is to never be the first to react. Most people rush to fill the air when something provokes them, eager to assert their position or defend their pride. But the one who waits gains the upper hand. A pause, even a brief one, forces others into uncertainty. They begin to wonder what you are thinking, whether you are offended, or whether you have already calculated your next move. This is not hesitation. It is deliberate control over the tempo. The first to react is often the one being led, while the one who waits is quietly leading the entire exchange. The second habit is to speak slower, say less, and leave earlier. Speaking slowly signals control over your emotions and your words. Saying less increases the value of every sentence because scarcity breeds attention. Leaving earlier creates mystery. It denies others the comfort of your constant presence and keeps them from taking you for granted. Most people seek to be understood. Power does not. Power seeks to be interpreted, allowing others to fill in the gaps with their own projections. And projections, when you control the frame, often make you seem larger than life. The third habit is to withdraw strategically. The most dominant people are not the ones always in the center of the room. They are the ones whose absence is felt. This is why you must vanish before your presence becomes ordinary. In conversation, in meetings, in relationships, step back before the energy dips, before familiarity dulls the edge of your influence. The dog is always there, and so it is taken for granted. The wolf appears, then disappears, leaving an unsettled awareness in its wake. People begin to ask where you went, why you left, and what you might be doing. That speculation becomes part of your aura. The fourth habit is to never over-explain your moves. The urge to justify decisions comes from wanting others to understand or approve. But every explanation is a small erosion of authority. If you said no, let it remain no. If you change direction, let it remain changed. The more you wrap your actions in reasons, the more you invite debate, persuasion, or dismissal. A threat never negotiates its boundaries. The simple act of holding your position without offering an emotional receipt tells people you operate on your own terms, not theirs. The fifth habit is to maintain emotional neutrality in social games. People will test you with jokes, bait you with provocations, or prod you with guilt to break your composure. The more unreadable you are, the more they will want to crack the code. This is not because they dislike you. It is because uncertainty is uncomfortable. If you stay neutral, smiling when you choose, engaging when you choose, they will be forced to assume you are stronger than they are. That assumption is power. Machiavelli understood that restraint is not the absence of emotion. It is the discipline of deciding when emotion is a weapon and when it is a weakness. These habits, practiced consistently, create an energy field around you that is felt before it is seen. You stop needing to prove yourself because your presence becomes a constant reminder that you are not someone to be handled carelessly. Every pause, every silence, every withheld reaction trains people to respect the space you occupy. And the longer you maintain them, the more permanent that respect becomes. Controlled tension is the quiet heartbeat of lasting influence. It is not chaos, not drama, but a finely tuned awareness that you are kind, yet not to be tested, calm, yet not to be played with, silent, yet fully awake. This tension is what keeps people slightly on edge in your presence, even when you've said nothing at all. It is the subtle current running beneath your interactions, the one that forces others to choose their words more carefully, to read your expressions more closely, to measure themselves before they approach you. Without this undercurrent, respect drifts toward comfort, and comfort drifts toward disregard. Machiavelli knew that tension works because it creates a state of anticipation. People fear what they do not understand, but they also respect what they cannot fully predict. When your energy is steady, but your warmth is inconsistent, you become impossible to map. One day you are observant and reserved, another day slightly amused, and on a third, silent but watchful. This does not make you unstable. It makes you deliberate. You are always composed, but not always inviting. You choose the version of yourself that fits the moment, and in doing so, you keep others from settling into the comfort of thinking they figured you out. The way you deliver this tension matters. You give one precise statement in a discussion, and then leave it at that, never repeating it for emphasis. You dissolve an argument with a single sentence, not a lecture. You correct a mistake once and let the correction stand without lingering. Then you step back, sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally, letting your absence speak louder than any follow-up could. That moment, small as it may seem, lingers in their mind far longer than 100 words would. They replay it, wonder about it, and in doing so, they keep you present in their thoughts. A crucial part of controlled tension is making people feel the weight of losing you without ever threatening to leave. You do this by withdrawing your attention, your warmth, or your engagement without explanation. You stop nodding in agreement. You step out of the conversation earlier than expected. You become professionally cold in the right moments. You let praise exist without rushing to confirm it, accepting compliments with a nod or a small smirk rather than eagerness. These actions send a quiet message. You are aware of your worth, and you do not need validation to confirm it. The genius of this balance is that it allows you to hold both fear and respect without tipping into either extreme. Fear without respect breeds resentment. Respect without fear breeds entitlement. But tension, the kind born from being unpredictable in warmth, steady in control, and selective in presence, creates the perfect blend. It ensures that when you are silent, people still hear your name echo in the room, and when you are gone, they still adjust themselves as if you were watching. Advanced Machiavellian strategy begins where most people stop, at the point where silence, composure, and controlled presence have already made you unreadable. The difference between someone who is simply quiet and someone who is strategically silent lies in how they shape perception even when absent. The first move is to read the room before revealing yourself. Most enter spaces eager to make their presence known, to set the tone immediately. But the Machiavellian player waits. They watch the energy, note the alliances, detect the tensions. They identify who is seeking influence, who is posturing, who is observing like they are. Only after this quiet assessment do they choose their entry. And by then, every word and gesture has more precision because it is anchored in understanding, not assumption. The second move is to use third-party perception as a tool. Your influence grows faster when others speak about you in your absence than when you speak for yourself. This is why strategic silence often amplifies your reputation. It gives people room to speculate, to interpret your motives, and to pass those interpretations along. Machiavelli understood that control of a narrative doesn't always come from telling your version. Sometimes, it comes from letting others build it for you. The key is to leave behind moments that invite retelling, an unexpected withdrawal, a sudden but calculated change in tone, a concise statement delivered at the perfect time. These fragments become stories, and stories turn into influence. The third move is to deploy strategic vulnerability, but rarely and with purpose. Constant vulnerability invites exploitation, but controlled, selective vulnerability can make your presence more compelling. It disarms without dismantling your authority. You reveal a small truth or a fleeting moment of openness in a way that deepens respect rather than diminishing it. And then, just as quickly, you return to composure. That contrast between openness and restraint reinforces the sense that every layer people see of you is a choice, not an accident. These advanced strategies are not about playing a different game. They are about playing the same game on a higher level. By choosing when to appear, how much to reveal, and how others will speak of you when you are not there, you stop relying solely on direct interaction to maintain influence. You begin to shape the environment itself, so that even without action, your presence is felt and your potential is calculated. This is where Machiavellian mastery lives, not in the visible exertion of power, but in the quiet certainty that you could, at any moment, change the entire course of the game. Becoming untouchable is not about building walls so high no one can reach you. It is about becoming so deliberately unreadable that even when people are close, they never truly hold the full map of who you are. Machiavelli's final form was never loud, never reckless, never dependent on constant action. It was disciplined presence. True power is not when people obey you because they are afraid of what you will do. It is when they move differently, simply because you might be watching. The unreadable man cannot be cornered. Once people believe they will never fully understand you, they stop trying to manage you and begin giving you space, adjusting themselves in your orbit without being asked. You do not get here overnight. You get here by training yourself to control visibility, control energy, and control the silence. You decide when to show warmth and when to withhold it. You master the art of leaving conversations before they are fully closed so that people carry them in their heads long after you are gone. You let them project stories onto you, and you never rush to correct them. In their uncertainty, they build a version of you that often commands more respect than the truth ever could. This is the final shift. Silence becomes your default, not your tactic. You no longer feel the pull to prove, explain, or display. You know when showing less makes you matter more. You know that absence can be a greater presence than constant availability. You understand that influence is not sustained by how often you act, but by how carefully you choose the moments when you do. The people who once tested you now calculate before they approach. The ones who once took you for granted now feel your absence like a missing pillar in the structure of their world. And those who speak your name do so with a kind of precision, as though invoking something that might alter the ground beneath them. This is not intimidation born of fear alone. It is respect shaped by the unknown. In the end, Machiavelli's true legacy is this: the most dangerous presence is not the one that strikes hardest, but the one that remains long after it has left the room. You do not need to dominate the conversation, the meeting, or the stage. You only need to leave the kind of impression that forces people to think of you when making their next move. That is how you become untouchable, not by building a fortress to hide in, but by becoming the ground they are never sure how to walk on.